Spain. Land of Moorish cathedrals. Land of sun-drenched coasts. Land of tapas and flamenco. There is a land that guards arenas now empty, the ancient rhythm of flamenco, and the works of a visionary architect who bent stone as if it were alive. It's the only place where every region defends its own language, as if defending a flag. Here, lunch can last until evening, and the night knows no haste, as if time flowed more slowly. This is Spain. It's also the second most mountainous country in Europe, after Switzerland. At its center stretches a vast plateau, the Meseta, which holds most of the country suspended at 600 meters, or about 1,970 feet above sea level. Even the capital sits up there. Madrid is the highest capital in Europe, at 655 meters, or roughly 2,150 feet above sea level. And yet you only need to head down toward the sea to find an entirely different world. Spain's coastline stretches beyond 7,800 kilometers, or nearly 4,850 miles. It touches the warm Mediterranean and the cold Atlantic, but also the Cantabrian Sea to the north and two distant archipelagos, the Balearics and the Canaries off Africa. Few lands in Europe touch so many different seas. But just when this country seems fully understood, there's a place that defies every certainty. In the south, in Almeria, opens the driest desert on the continent. It's called Tabernas, and it looks so much like the Wild West that dozens of Western films were shot here, with their dusty streets and wooden saloons. It's a piece of America right in the middle of Europe. But the most Spanish thing of all isn't something you see, it's something you hear. And it's in the very way people speak here. Spanish is one of the most widely spoken languages on the planet, spoken across much of Latin America and by hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And yet, within its own borders, Spanish isn't alone. There are three other recognized languages like Catalan, Galician, and Basque. And that's no small detail because it reveals what this country is really made of. Every region is almost a nation unto itself. A Galician from the northwest with the rain, the Celtic roots, and the sound of the bagpipes has little in common with an Andalusian from the south, shaped by sun, flamenco, and Arab heritage. Same passport, but completely different worlds. But as different as Spain may be within its own borders, there's one place where all its people come together in the same way. And that place is the bar. Here, there are more of them than in any other country in Europe, roughly one for every 175 people. And it's not just a place to drink. It's where people have breakfast, grab a mid-morning coffee, exchange a word, and eat tapas at any hour of the day. And tapas, those small bites that go with a drink, may have been born in these very bars, for the simplest of reasons. It's said the name comes from tapar, which means to cover. It was a slice of bread or ham placed over the glass to keep the flies away. From that practical little gesture, an entire food culture was born. It's all of this together that explains the pull Spain has on the world. Every year, it's one of the most visited nations on the planet and battles France for the very top spot. But a country like this can't be told through numbers. It has to be told one place at a time. So it's worth starting right where the sea meets the city, where Catalan is spoken, and where the stone of that visionary architect took shape. Barcelona. The salt air of the Mediterranean settles over the facades, and the city breathes between the sea and the hill. It's the capital of Catalonia, and it lives two lives at once. There's the old soul of the Barrio Gótico, made of narrow alleys and stone, and the one that rises toward the sky with the curves of Gaudí. Along the Rambla, there's the steady flow of tourists, past trees, kiosks, and the smell of the sea. Right here also sits the Boqueria market, with stalls of fruit, fresh fish, and spices flooding the air with 1,000 scents. But it's the Sagrada Familia that truly takes your breath away. The great church that has kept growing for over 140 years and still isn't finished. Gaudí imagined it as a forest of stone, and even today cranes work among its towers. Those who step inside look up and lose themselves in the colored light filtering through the glass. Then there's the food. Plates of tapas and glasses of cava that tell the story of the city better than 1,000 words. From here, a train ride of barely an hour reaches another Catalan gem. Girona. Pastel-colored houses mirror themselves in the Onyar River. Ochre, red, yellow, like a palette laid across the water. It's a medieval city left untouched, and it holds one of the best preserved Jewish quarters in Europe. Called El Col, it's a maze of uphill alleys where time seems to have frozen solid. You can even walk along the ancient walls, and so the city opens up from above, among rooftops and bell towers, all the way to the cathedral. One of the bridges over the Onyar River bears the signature of Gustave Eiffel, built years before his tower in Paris. But you only need to head down toward the sea to leave the arcades and bridges behind and find the silence of a small white harbor. Cadaqués. White houses facing a deep blue sea, at the end of a road that seems like it will never end. It's the most isolated village on the Costa Brava, shielded by a headland of twisted rock that has kept mass tourism at bay. Fishing boats rock gently in the bay, while nets dry in the sun. Its stone lanes climb steeply between whitewashed walls. At sunset, the light turns golden, and the white church at the top of the village watches over the harbor. Then this small seaside world fades away, and the road heads toward the restless heart of the great capital. Madrid. Right in the exact heart of Spain, atop the high tableland of the Meseta, rises the highest capital in Europe. A city that never sleeps and shifts between the calm of its parks and the roar of its nights. In Plaza Mayor, under the arcades, people sip coffee and watch the crowd go by. In Retiro Park, people row across a small lake in the shade of the plane trees. But the real treasure is the Prado Museum. Through its halls, past the masterpieces of Velázquez, Goya, and the great masters in one of the most extraordinary painting collections in the world. At night, the city lights up, and the rhythm doesn't fade until dawn. Less than an hour from here, just beyond the plateau, lies one of the most iconic day trips from Madrid. Toledo. Perched on a hill and wrapped by the Tagus River, which embraces it on three sides. For centuries, Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived here, side by side. It's the city of three cultures, and every alley still carries the mark of it. Its narrow streets climb and drop, lined with former artisan workshops from when the city was famous the world over for its swords. Above the rooftops rise the two monuments that dominate the city: the imposing Alcazar, an ancient fortress with 4 towers, and the majestic Gothic cathedral with its bell tower reaching toward the sky. The painter El Greco also lived here, and he loved this city so much that he painted it under a stormy sky. Then there's another town nearby, one that has stayed frozen in time and is very often visited together with Toledo. Segovia. On the Castilian plateau, where the air is dry and the stone is golden, stands something that seems almost impossible. A Roman aqueduct, 2,000 years old, crosses the city, arch after arch. It stands nearly 30 meters, or about 98 feet tall, built from massive granite blocks, fitted together without a drop of mortar, held up by nothing but their own weight. The historic center is a tangle of stone lanes, all converging on the great cathedral, the last one ever built in all of Spain. At the top of the town stands the Alcazar too, its pointed towers reaching outward. Legend has it that this very fortress inspired Disney's fairy tale castle. Cordoba. On the banks of the Guadalquivir River rests a city that was once among the greatest in the world. A 1,000 years ago, capital of a shining caliphate, Cordoba glowed with libraries and gardens, while much of Europe sat in darkness. From that age remains the mezquita. Stepping inside, you find yourself in a forest of columns and hundreds of arches striped red and white that play tricks on the eye. And then right in the middle of this mosque opens a cathedral. One temple inside another, locked together forever. Outside in the white alleys, courtyards overflow with geraniums, and the air smells of orange blossom. From here, an old road runs east toward another great inland city, the very last to remain in Moorish hands. Granada. At the foot of the Sierra Nevada, with its snow-capped peaks visible even in summer, stretches the last dream of the Moorish kings. It was here that in 1492 the last Muslim kingdom in Spain fell, and legend says its king, as he left, turned back to weep. Above the city watches the Alhambra, a palace fortress full of carved chambers, water-filled courtyards, and elegant fountains. In the gardens of the Generalife, water still flows between hedges and roses. Down below in the Albayzín quarter, white alleys climb steeply, and from one of its many terraces, at sunset you can watch the Alhambra turn gold. This city, then, lives clinging to its hillside, but further south another town defies the void in an even bolder way. Ronda. Suspended above the void and split in two by a gorge, roughly 100 meters or about 330 feet deep. A stone bridge called the Puente Nuevo links the two halves of the town, spanning the abyss. Below, the ravine plunges down, and at the bottom a thin river runs. Modern bullfighting was born here, and its bullring is among the oldest in Spain. It's no surprise that Ernest Hemingway fell in love with it and kept coming back for the wine and for the courage of its people. At sunset, the white houses on the edge of the cliff turn pink. But the realm of the highlands ends here for now. From this ridge, the land eases down toward the plain, into the heart of Andalusia. Seville. Warm and scented with orange blossom, it hums to the sound of guitars and heel-striking wood. It's the city of flamenco, where in its taverns it isn't a show but a release, a heartbeat, a voice that breaks. At the center rises the Giralda, the old minaret turned bell tower, which you climb by way of ramps. Beside the Giralda, one of the largest churches in the world holds what's believed to be the tomb of Christopher Columbus, held up by 4 enormous statues. And then there's Plaza de España, perhaps one of the most beautiful squares in the world. Here you can row along a canal that runs beneath arches of colored ceramic, one for every province of Spain. The city is also crossed by the Guadalquivir River, which here runs wide and slow. It's the same river that a little further downstream rushes out to meet the ocean. Cádiz. Surrounded by the ocean on almost every side, it's perhaps the oldest city in Europe. Phoenicians, Romans, everyone landed here. It's said to hold more than 3,000 years of history. Its houses look out over the open sea, and the salty wind sweeps through the narrow streets of the center. Here, everything is light in color, with white facades, flowered balconies, and open squares that smell of salt and of joy. Even the great cathedral faces the sea, its dome gleaming under the blazing Andalusian sun. On La Caleta Beach, wedged between 2 castles, the sun drops straight into the ocean. And it's on the shores of the Atlantic that our journey through southern Spain comes to a close. Now we move toward another sea, calmer and bluer, that laps at 4 Spanish islands. Balearic Islands. In the blue of the Mediterranean, we find 4 different islands that resemble each other only a little, as if they were sisters. Mallorca is the big one, with mountains that drop straight into the sea and stone villages hidden among the olive trees. Menorca is the quiet one, lined with hidden coves, where the water is so clear the boats seem to float in midair. Ibiza, meanwhile, sleeps by day and lights up by night. But it also holds an old town, white and silent, above the harbor. And finally, there's Formentera, the smallest, with white sand and clear water, like something out of the Caribbean. But there are other Spanish islands far, far from here, where the sea is ocean and the land is very dark. Canary Islands. Seven volcanic islands, scattered across the Atlantic, closer to Africa than to Spain, suspended in an endless spring. Here the land is black, the sun is strong all year round, and the landscape keeps changing. On Tenerife rises Mount Teide, a volcano still alive and considered the highest peak in all of Spain. It stands nearly 4,000 meters, or about 13,100 feet, and there's often snow at the top, while down below people are at the beach. On Lanzarote, lava has carved out a lunar world, with vines growing in pits dug into the ash, sheltered by small stone walls. Even the beaches are black sand, and out at sea whales pass by. From these remote islands, we now head back to the mainland, toward the warm sun of southern Spain, where the Mediterranean begins again. Málaga. Facing the sea and warmed by the sun almost every day of the year, it's the bright gateway to the Costa del Sol. Pablo Picasso was born here, and the city honors him with a museum that gathers his works. Above the harbor, the Moorish Alcazaba climbs the hillside with gardens and fountains. Higher still, the ruins of Gibralfaro Castle look down over the city and the sea, all the way to the mountains on the horizon. Down below instead, the elegant streets of the center open between palm trees and shops, down to the waterfront, where people stroll between the harbor and the beach. From here, if we follow the coast north, we reach another great city, facing the water. Valencia. Where the sun meets the sea, among wide beaches and orange groves, stretches the third largest city in Spain. This is where paella was born, the real one. The one made with rice, rabbit, chicken, and beans, and never with seafood, the way we're used to seeing it today. The river that once ran through the city was diverted after a flood, and the old riverbed became a long, green park running through the whole center. Where the water once flowed, cyclists now ride among palm trees and gardens. At the end of that park opens the City of Arts and Sciences, a world of white futuristic buildings that look like they dropped in from another planet. In the old center, then, stands the central market, inside a kind of cathedral of iron and glass, full of color and full of voices. If we head just a little further south, we find ourselves under that same sun, hot and dry. Murcia. It's a land of sun and orchards. In fact, they call it the Garden of Europe for its stretches of fruit and vegetables. Here it barely rains. The soil is dry, and yet it blooms thanks to channels dug by the Arabs thousands of years ago and still in use today. The city of Murcia holds a cathedral with an ornate facade and a bell tower you can climb to take in the green landscape all around. Along the coast, the Mar Menor is a warm, shallow lagoon, separated from the open sea by a strip of sand. It's a kind of sea within a sea, where the water runs warm too. But now let's leave the sun and the dry land of the south and fly to the far north, where green and rain sketch out another Spain, the Basque one. San Sebastián. In the green, rainy north of the country, facing the Cantabrian Sea, is the most elegant city in the Basque Country. It rests around a perfect bay shaped like a shell, with La Concha Beach considered one of the most beautiful in Europe. You stroll the seafront along its white railing, while two green hills guard the bay on either side. In the bars of the old town, the counters overflow with pinchos, small bites skewered on a toothpick, eaten standing up, one after another, hopping from bar to bar. It's a tiny city, but it boasts an outstanding food scene, thanks in part to its many Michelin-starred restaurants. A little further west along the same coast waits its big Basque sister. Bilbao. A city of iron and factories, gray and working class, that one day decided to be reborn. centuries it lived off its port and its steel. Then the industries closed, and the river was left dirty. Then a building arrived to change its fate. The Guggenheim Museum, a kind of shell made of gleaming steel curves. From that day on, the whole world wanted to see it, and the city came back to life. Beneath its waves of metal, watches over a giant dog made of living flowers that changes color with every season. In the old quarter, the narrow streets often fill up with people at Pincho hour. This city, then, is the gateway to one of the proudest and most distinct regions in all of Spain. Basque Country. A land apart, with a language unlike any other on Earth, so ancient that no one knows where it came from. There are hills of deep green that roll down toward a sea that's often gray and choppy, and dotted with white farmhouses topped in red roofs. In fishing villages, colorful boats come home at sunset, loaded with fish. On the hillsides graze the sheep, from which comes a strong, smoky cheese. And along the coast sits San Juan de Gaztelugatxe, a small islet tied to the mainland by a stone bridge, and by hundreds of steps climbing up to a tiny church, battered by the wind. Continuing along the coast westward, the green keeps going, and we enter another land facing the same sea. Santander. Refined and facing the sea, it stretches along a wide bay where even the king once came to spend the summer. It's a city of elegant beaches and pale buildings, and it keeps the quiet air of a resort town from another era. On the Magdalena Peninsula stands the palace where the king used to spend his vacations. Today it's surrounded by a park facing the ocean, home to seals and penguins. The beaches are often full of sunbathers and surfers, riding the waves in the cool wind. This is true northern Spain, land of rain and of sea. Santiago de Compostela. With more than 1,000 kilometers, or over 620 miles of road behind them, pilgrims finally see before their eyes the destination of a journey centuries old. They set out from all over Europe to reach the cathedral of the city. Here it's believed the Apostle James is buried. Exhausted walkers arriving in the square let themselves collapse to the ground, gazing up at the dark stone spires. Inside the church, on feast days, a giant silver incense burner swings, hanging from the ceiling. In the rain-soaked stone alleys, people eat Galician-style octopus and drink the region's white wine. From here, heading east, the green turns to mountain, and the wild peaks of the north appear. Picos de Europa. Walls of limestone that rise suddenly from the sea and so close to the coast that they're the first thing sailors see on arrival. These are jagged peaks that rise past 2,500 meters or about 8,200 feet with deep gorges cut by rivers and green meadows where cows graze. On these mountains, the brown bear still lives, back after nearly vanishing for good. A cable car climbs in just minutes from the valley floor, up to a rocky terrace, suspended in midair. These wild peaks are the heart of a green, damp land that stretches out all around and runs down to the sea. Asturias. Deep green everywhere, between mountains and ocean. Here it rains often, the meadows are emerald, and the cows graze almost right up to the beaches. It's also the land of apple cider. Along the coast, there are wild beaches that open between green cliffs, and in Gijón, the waves reach right up to the houses. And it's said with pride that here Spain was never conquered by the Arabs. In fact, it was from these very mountains that the long Reconquista began. But this world is only one side of the country. To the east, the land turns dry and windy under a harsher sky. Zaragoza. A city often overlooked by travelers. It rises in the middle of a vast plain, swept by the wind, along the great Ebro River. And yet here stands one of the most imposing churches in Spain, the Basilica del Pilar. Its towers and its domes are covered in colorful tiles that mirror themselves in the river. Inside, a column is venerated, and legend says the Virgin appeared right here, on that pillar of stone. The cold north wind sweeps constantly through the city's wide streets. It was also the city of Goya, the great painter who painted his earliest works here. Castile and León. This is the ancient heart of Spain, made of an immense plateau of wheat and sky, where the distances seem never to end. Its very name comes from the castles that once defended its borders. And this is the symbol of a land forged by frontier and by conquest. Here the Spanish language was born, Castilian, which from this land spread out into the world. It's also a region full of cities steeped in history. There's Salamanca, for instance, with its university, among the oldest in Europe. Or there's Burgos, with an immense cathedral, its spires reaching skyward. Or León, with stained glass that fills the main church with colored light. From these plains, we now climb north toward a small kingdom set among the mountains. Nuvar. A middle ground between mountain and plain that changes character with every valley. Its capital, Pamplona, is known worldwide for one thing alone: the running of the bulls. Every July, for the feast of San Fermin, men dressed in white and red run ahead of bulls set loose through the narrow streets of the center. In a handful of minutes, fear and madness unfold, that Hemingway himself made famous around the world. But Nuvar is much more than its bulls. To the north, the land climbs through beech forests and green valleys, up to the Pyrenees. Its soil also grows excellent asparagus and red peppers, and produces a good, robust wine. But now let's close our journey through Spain with a place that time seems to have forgotten entirely, suspended in an almost unreal silence. Albarracín. At the bottom of a gorge, clinging to red rock as if it were part of it, a small village appears. Its houses are an antique shade of pink, made from the very same red earth as the mountains that surround it. From a distance, it almost blends into it. Above the village, walls climb steeply up to a lone tower. Its streets are so narrow that in some spots the balconies of facing houses nearly touch. All around, among the pines and rocks, hide caves with rock paintings thousands of years old, hands and figures drawn by prehistoric men. And it's right here, in this silence carved into the red rock, that our journey ends. Beyond these gorges, Spain continues. New cities, new coasts, new landscapes carry on, past the horizon. But this is no longer part of our story. A new journey awaits us elsewhere. Thank you for watching.